Welcome to the world's cheapest V8 manual M3, which I paid a crazy cheap $11,000 for with the goal of fully restoring it. So far I've done rod bearing surgery on the engine, I refreshed the brakes and the suspension, I welded back the stock cats, I refinished the headlights, wheels, and bumpers, and took it on its maiden drive, where I found a nasty driveshaft vibration and the dreaded cowbell clink. So let's fix that before this M3 is finally ready to hit the track. 1001, 1002. All right, enough of that. So here's the problem. Center bearing completely gone. And this CV joint has seen better days. Half seized, barely able to get it moving. And oh yeah, the guibo, El Guibo flex disc, lots of little hairline cracks in it, so we'll get that sorted out too. Let's go. I've marked the two halves. Now let's split this guy. I soaked this in penetrating lube last night. Clearly, it did the trick. There we go. Also, check out the amount of play that this bearing has. That's definitely going to cause some problems. First, cut out the old one like a room temperature knife through cold butter. Let's see, is it coming out? Okay, well, we got the rubber off. Now for the bearing. Oh yeah, floor is definitely the way to go. Bingo! Brake fluid and a bit of Scotch-Brite. Nice and smooth. Now that this is all cleaned up, let's fit our new center bearing. What? Mother... What is this? Doesn't fit. Look at that. Garbage. So frustrating. So I ordered this off Rock Auto. I put the real OEM number in the search bar. This thing came up. And lesson learned, boys and girls. When you're buying stuff for M cars, specific stuff, don't use Rock Auto. Son of a... Alright, well this has to get returned now. So let's park this until I get the right part in. Alright, while we wait for that other thing, let's take apart this CV joint. By the way, how do you know a CV joint is bad? Well, this is supposed to move freely, and it's super stiff. And there are 6 ball bearings in here. They're supposed to be sort of coated in grease and be able to move around freely. This one is obviously quite jammed up. So let's extract this guy. There's a circlip down here. Pop goes the weasel, and this is what the inside looks like. And right along this flange, there's like a press ring that's holding this thing on. So you can see kind of how this is supposed to move around. What we need to do is get this little circlip out. Anytime you're dealing with circlips, get your spectacles on, because this stuff goes flying. There we go, there's the sucker out. Now let's clean this thing off. Now I ordered this off of Mako driveshafts. I think they're out of Florida. This is unique to the E90, E92 M3 rear CV joint. This was $100 US. The OEM part I think is like $250 or $300 US. So let's check this out. So there's some worthless instructions. We've got our gaskets. We got some CV joint grease. We got the rubber sleeve boot. We've got the top hat. And we've got the CV joint itself with the ball bearings. We've also got the OEM washer sleeve, as well as a bunch of bolts and that circlip for assembly. So let's put this together. So if you look at this side, you've got a sort of grooved edge here, and then this side is flat. So we're gonna put the thin washer onto the back side, and then this is gonna go on here. It's gonna go on there like that. Let's tap this down. So after 20 minutes of pounding, this is finally in. Now we can put our new circlip in. Now we got to make sure that this gasket is on here properly as well. So I'm just going to finagle this into position. And actually the best way to keep them centered is if I put these bolts through. There we go. Now we're going to push this up. So now I'm using some bolts to basically tighten this up so that this lip becomes flush with this little ridge here all the way around. Now we can start packing with grease and start filling. Now this is going to get super messy. Just wiggle it up and down and up and down and up and down and all around. Make sure everything is nice and greasy. Clean off the lip. Now we got to clean out the holes. Last grease worm. Ooh, that was a good one. So here's the finished product. I've got the collar snapped on, and I am using the old zip tie trick, and I'm going to leave one of these holes open so that when I put this back onto the diff, I just snip these off and this top part isn't going to fall off. Because even with the bolt method, this was coming off and getting loose. So this needs to be tightened on with the screws against the diff. So that's done. And look what came in the mail, the proper part. Now, if you search this part, BMW and Febi make the exact same part. Now, to install the new bearing, you want the part with the flange facing the end where the guibo is going to go, where the flex disc is going to go. We're going to slide this over, and I'm going to use this press cup. You could use a socket, doesn't matter, as long as it goes over and it pushes on the inner metal lip of the bearing, which this does, and it clears those splines nicely. So we're going to take this and tap it down. And the sound has changed. We want to put back the ring. And we want to line up the two marks that we made. Friends again. But before we put them back, we got to do one more important thing. And that's under here, because this thing has tons of play. Just look at that. And it's beyond sloppy. Let me show you what it looks like in the cabin. So, I mean, just look at the amount of side-to-side flop and slop there is. There's probably a good 1 to 2 centimeters of side-to-side in every gear, even in neutral. So first, we gotta take this shifter off. Now there's some wires under here. Oh, managed not to give ourselves a black eye. Now, let's head down below. Here goes nothing. Sorry you can't see a goddamn thing. Frankly, neither can I. Right, so here's all the old stuff we took out. Here is the shifter arm. Now, what goes bad on these? Well, these bushings here, I'm going to show you. These ones typically go bad and get loose. This cup down here, this plastic cup, goes bad. Now, a lot of people just try and replace this, and yes, if you can hear that, that does have some up and down play, but that is not the only thing. This is what connects to the shaft coming out of the transmission, and as you can see on the bottom there, it's completely empty, disintegrated. Let me show you what the new parts look like for this thing. So, This is a pile of parts that I got from FCP Euro. That's right, people who actually know what they're talking about. Unlike Rock Auto, don't worry, I'm still bitter. Now, FCP Euro sells this as a complete kit. This costs about $200 Canadian, $230 Canadian. I priced out every single one of these pieces from a Canadian BMW dealer, and it was over $500, $550 with tax included. Outrageous. So if you're going to be rebuilding an M3's manual sort of shift linkage, go with the kit from FCP Euro. Highly recommended. So this thing, do you see how it has this firm sponge in here? This one has completely disintegrated. So yes, you could just change the cup, but without changing these bushings, without changing this bushing, and without changing these bushings over here on the ends, you're not really getting a crisp new shifter feeling experience. Now, let's try and clean this thing up as best as we can. Let's try and break some of these plastic tabs. There we go. All right, now that those two are finally separated, we can clean this up. Brake cleaner, Scotch-Brite, slide that off. There we go. Now time to remove this thing and these two rubber bushings here and work it out with a screwdriver. Luckily, all that leaking oil from the transmission helps pop it out in a snap. Wriggle it around and it just slides out. Now it's time to put these guys in. I'm going to put some water on them. Don't you want to go home? There we go. Now the cup, no lube specified. Click. Want to make sure you line up the notches here so that it slides in. All right, so we've got our cup in. Make sure it's nice and solid in there, no clunking. And now this thing has an arrow pointing down and an arrow pointing forward, so it slides on. Now we can go under the car, put this all back. The trickiest bit is this pin over here. It's gonna have to slide through, and then I'm gonna close this locking nut. These guys go in here and snap in on the sides, and then this attaches to the ends of this pin. I'm not gonna show you what that looks like underneath, but I will show you what the shifter feels like. All right, so the shifter is in. Now time to put back the flex disc, the new one, the drive shaft over there on the floor. But before I do that, I want to drain the Liquimoly 75-140 diff oil that I have back here. And the reason why is I have the infamous groaning, grinding noise at low speed parking lot turns. And the only way to correct that is to use BMW fluid with friction modifier built in. This is the stuff in question with the FM booster. Now, I wouldn't be changing this if it wasn't making the noise. Plus, I want to take it to the track, and I don't want any damage happening to the very expensive LSD unit on this. This stuff is $50 Canadian with tax, making it $1 per 10 milliliters. It may as well have gold flake in it. It is that expensive. But you know what? If it's going to save my diff, worth every penny. So this is about 1,000 kilometers old Liquimoly 75-140, which a lot of people run successfully in this car, but clearly was making way too much noise. And I'm talking like a lot of grinding noise. No metal shavings or anything, so we're good there. Streaming out, torque spec 44 foot-pounds. Now let's put in the flex disc, the drive shaft, the exhaust, and let's go for a ride. Right, let's go for a drive. Oof, feel that sweet shifter right off the bat. Much more positive engagement. A little bit of side-to-side play. when you're in neutral, but then once you put it in gear, it's so much tighter. Again, we are talking about a transmission that's got 300,000 kilometers almost, but it feels 80% as good as new, so highly recommend. Now, how about my drive shaft? Oh, no cowbell. So far, no cowbell clink. Look at that. Hold on, let's try rolling backwards, rolling forwards. Nope. Yes, okay, cowbell clink. One of two is solved. Let's see if we're gonna have luck with the vibrations at 3,000 RPM. How are our vibrations gonna feel? That was smooth. Try second gear. Ho 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 ho! Yes! Close the windows a little bit so you can hear me better. First of all, the driveline has 0 shakes now. The shifter is no longer rattling around. Usually what I found is I would feel like excess vibrations through the shifter. I'm not feeling that anymore. Shifter feels flawless. It's not vibrating. Woohoo! Yes, yes! The CV joint, center support bearing, and that flex disc at the front. All three of them made any sense of driveline vibrations disappear. And in my case, the dreaded clink or the cowbell noise, you know, when you're going from, you know, reverse to first or first to reverse or on and off the throttle, that disappeared as well. Now, I know it doesn't work for everybody necessarily, but in my case, it did the trick. So if anybody's out there watching, try that. The other thing I did, which is important, which is in the manual, is when you're reattaching the drive shaft, move it forward 1/2 centimeter, then tighten the bolts for the center support bearing. I don't know if that has anything to do with, you know, getting rid of that cowbell noise, but I just thought I'd mention it. So what's next for the M3? Well, it's going under the knife, getting the seats out and getting a proper interior restoration. There might be a track day in the works. It is September in Canada, so track days are very limited. We basically got a couple of weeks of decent weather before the snow hits. So I got shafted by Rock Auto on my last track day, and I'm hoping I can squeeze in at least one in early October. Oh, the car is just such a pleasure to drive. Woo! And then over the winter, I think I'm gonna do a full paint correction, decontamination, sand and polish the windshield because it has 1 million stone chips. It's original, it has 290,000 kilometers. And then I think the car is gonna be more or less stock OEM plus finished. The only thing I gotta do on the engine is do some programming to get rid of that check engine light for the primary cats being gone and the O2 sensors all throwing wonky codes. But other than that, this car is 99% stock, fully restored at that point. What am I gonna be doing after that? You let me know in the comments. I would love to hear from you. In the meantime, look out for a potential track day, and at the very least, we're going to be ripping out this interior and doing a full interior rejuvenation. Thank you so much for watching. Adios. Whew, that never gets old.